Essay 1. From Woodland to Plains. How Turtle Mountain Culture Changed. The Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa originally lived in the forested Great Lakes region, where they followed woodland lifeways. Their homes were made of birch bark, and they traveled by canoe, also crafted from birch. These materials were perfect for the dense forests and lakes they lived near. Their diet came from fishing, gathering wild rice, and hunting small game. Spiritual practices were tied to the land, water, and seasonal cycles. But by the late 1700s, things started to shift. Colonial expansion, fur trade pressures, and conflict with other tribes pushed the Chippewa westward. By the early 1800s, they had entered the Turtle Mountain region and began adapting to the Great Plains. This wasn't just a change in location, it was a full cultural transformation. On the plains, the Chippewa began using horses for travel and hunting. They switched from birch bark wigwams to teepees made from buffalo hide, which were easier to move and better suited for open landscapes. They also started hunting bison, which became central to their economy and diet. The Red River cart, developed by Métis families, became a key tool for trade and mobility. These changes weren't just about survival, they were about blending traditions and creating something new. Leaders like Chief Little Shell II helped guide the community through this transition. Little Shell I led during battles with the Dakota and worked with fur traders. His son, Little Shell II, later resisted U.S. land deals and fought to protect tribal rights. As the community became more mobile and trade-focused, they also faced pressure from the U.S. and Canadian governments to sign treaties and give up land. Even with these changes, they held on to their ceremonies, language, and identity. In order that justice may be done, Chapters 2-4 explain how this cultural shift made the Turtle Mountain Band more visible to colonial powers, who then tried to control their land. Chapter 5 shows how the U.S. misunderstood their mixed identity, part woodland, part plains, and excluded them from treaty protections. This transformation wasn't just about adapting to a new environment. It was about survival, resistance, and cultural strength. The Turtle Mountain Band didn't lose who they were. They reshaped it to fit the world around them. Essay 2. Métis and Michif Lifeways, Culture, Resistance, and Survival. 1800 to 1870. Between 1800 and 1870, the Métis and Michif people in Turtle Mountain built a strong identity that mixed Indigenous and French-Canadian roots. Their culture came out of the fur trade, with families combining Cree, Chippewa, and French traditions. They spoke Michif, a language that blends Cree verbs and French nouns. Their way of life was centered around bison hunts, trading, and close family networks across the northern plains. Bison hunts were a big deal, not just for food, but for ceremony and community. These hunts were carefully organized with elected leaders and strict rules. They helped bring people together and build pride. Politically, the Métis pushed back against being labeled non-treaty Indians. They wanted recognition for who they were and the land they lived on. Leaders like Little Shell II played key roles in this era, guiding the community through political pressure and organizing resistance to land loss. As pressure from the U.S. government increased, many Métis families were forced to leave Turtle Mountain. Some were relocated to parts of Montana, while others moved north into Canada. especially to Manitoba and Saskatchewan. This scattering of families broke apart tight-knit communities and made it harder to maintain cultural traditions. Despite this, many Métis continue to speak Michif, practice their faith, and pass down stories and skills, even in new places. The forced movement of people was part of a larger pattern of colonial policies that tried to erase Indigenous and Métis presence from valuable land. Chapter 3 of In Order That Justice May Be Done talks about how Métis families were often left out of treaty talks, even though they had deep roots in Turtle Mountain. Chapter 6 shows how the U.S. ignored Métis land claims during the 1892 10-cent treaty, which led to land loss, forced moves, and cultural damage. Métis communities were close-knit, with extended families sharing resources. They practiced both Catholic and Indigenous ceremonies. Politically, they were stuck between U.S. and Canadian governments and had to fight hard to be recognized.